My wife cheated with my college friend, so I ensured their reputations were destroyed. The day I found out my wife cheated on me, I felt like the world had crashed down. But what hit harder than the betrayal itself was who she had done it with. My college friend, someone I trusted, someone I thought had my back. My entire life had been built on the idea that loyalty and trust were the pillars of any relationship. But that was shattered in an instant. I was blindsided, enraged, but oddly calm, knowing that I could never let them get away with this. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. Should I confront them both? Should I let it slide and move on? But no, I was done being the victim. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. They had crossed a line, and I would ensure that their reputations, their carefully built lives, would crumble under the weight of their deceit. What happened next will leave you speechless, as I took matters into my own hands, ensuring their betrayal would never be forgotten. I had always prided myself on my ability to pick good friends, people who would have my back no matter what. So, when I met my wife, I thought I had found someone who shared that same sense of loyalty. We started dating during our college years, and everything seemed perfect. We built a life together, supported each other's dreams, and created a home that felt like it was built on a solid foundation of trust. I couldn't have asked for more. But as the years went by, cracks started to appear. Small things at first, missed dates, strange behavior, things I dismissed as just the normal stresses of life. I didn't think much of it. But as the distance between us grew, I began to question whether I had truly known the woman I married. She seemed different, distant, and I couldn't understand why. It was only after a random, gut-wrenching discovery that the truth finally came crashing down on me. I was going through some old emails one evening when I stumbled upon a conversation between my wife and my college friend. At first, I thought it was harmless, maybe just an old conversation they had left unfinished. But as I scrolled through the messages, my stomach dropped. The tone of the conversation was more than friendly. It was intimate, filled with references to moments they shared together. And then I saw the pictures. My wife and my college friend in a hotel room, looking more than just friendly. It felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My own friend, the person I had trusted for years, had crossed a line I never thought was possible. And my wife? She had been lying to me for who knows how long. I had to take a step back and process it all, but deep down, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to go unpunished. My relationship with my wife was built on years of friendship, shared memories, and a deep connection that I had always believed was unbreakable. We met in college, and our relationship blossomed quickly. Our friendship grew naturally before it turned into something more, and we became each other's biggest support system. We celebrated every milestone together, from graduation to job promotions, to buying our first house. Life seemed perfect. I had always trusted her without question. She was caring, attentive, and everything I could have ever wanted in a partner. My college friends were also a big part of our lives, and we would often get together for weekend BBQs or game nights. Among them was my closest friend, Alex. He and I had been inseparable since our first year in school. We shared everything: our dreams, our fears, our ups and downs. He was like a brother to me, someone I knew I could always rely on. Alex and my wife had always gotten along well. They would talk when we all hung out, and I never thought anything of it. In fact, I was grateful they had a friendship of their own. It felt like we were one big, happy family, supporting each other through all the challenges life threw at us. The idea that something could be wrong never even crossed my mind. But looking back now, I realized that I missed the signs. There were moments, little things here and there, that I brushed off. Texts that went unanswered, strange absences, sudden shifts in mood. I had been so consumed with work and trying to maintain the life we had built that I never stopped to question her. I never thought that the two people I trusted the most would betray me in the worst way possible. It wasn't until I stumbled upon that email conversation, that night of devastating discovery, that everything finally made sense. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together in a way I never expected, and suddenly, the life I had known felt like a lie. It all started with a single email. I had no idea that this innocuous piece of correspondence would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. My wife and I had been together for almost a decade by then, and the trust one had placed in her felt like the cornerstone of our marriage. But everything changed the evening I accidentally found that email. It was a Friday night, and she was out with her friends. As was often the case, I stayed home, finishing some work that had piled up throughout the week. My laptop was sitting open on the kitchen table, and as I walked past it to grab a drink, a notification popped up. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something felt different that evening, an unease that I couldn't shake. The notification was from a name I didn't recognize, and without thinking, I opened the email. It was addressed to my wife, and the subject line alone sent a cold wave through me. "I miss you, can't wait to see you again." I felt my heart rate spike. I knew instantly something wasn't right. I clicked on the email, and with every line I read, I could feel the room start to close in on me. The sender was Alex. My best friend, my college buddy, the person I had trusted more than anyone in the world. I had always thought of him as family, someone who would never betray me. But the words on the screen told a different story. The email was full of affection, filled with intimate language that made it clear their relationship went far beyond friendship. As I read the words, the shock and disbelief I felt began to turn into something more like anger. I scrolled through more messages, some of which were so detailed that it left nothing to the imagination. They had been seeing each other for months, meeting up in secret, sneaking around behind my back. I felt sick to my stomach as the details painted a picture I never could have imagined. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. This was my wife, my partner, the person I had built my life with. How could she do this to me? And Alex, how could he, of all people, betray me in such a cruel way? I had shared everything with him, including my deepest vulnerabilities. He knew me better than anyone, yet he chose to cross a line that I never thought was even possible. And my wife, how could she do this, knowing what we had built together? I found myself frozen in place, staring at the screen, not fully able to comprehend the magnitude of what I was reading. The emotions started to flood in: shock, confusion, hurt, and ultimately, betrayal. I had no idea how long I had been sitting there, just processing the weight of the discovery. But there was one thing that I knew for certain: I could no longer ignore the truth. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The discovery didn't end there. I dug deeper. I went through more messages, even looking at phone records and location data. It was all there, clear as day. They had been meeting up in various locations over the past few months, lying to me about where they had been. They'd been careful, of course. I never suspected a thing. They had each played their part so well, crafting the illusion of a happy, trusting relationship while secretly tearing it all down. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. No, it was the lies. It was the deceit, the pretending that everything was normal while I was kept in the dark. It was the realization that the two people I trusted most in the world had taken my love and turned it into something ugly and deceptive. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair, it was about the trust that had been shattered in a way I could never rebuild. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to do next. I felt like my world had been turned upside down, and all the emotions I was trying to contain were bubbling to the surface. Part of me wanted to confront them right away, to throw everything in their faces and demand answers. But another part of me was paralyzed by the fear of what that confrontation might lead to. The pain was almost unbearable, and I didn't know how I would even begin to process everything. But I knew one thing for sure: I could never go back to the way things were before I knew the truth. I decided to gather myself, take a breath, and step back for a moment. I needed to think this through, to process what had happened before I made any rash decisions. But deep down, I already knew the only choice that made sense: I could never forgive this. This wasn't something that could be swept under the rug or brushed off with an apology. This was a betrayal on a level that I couldn't even describe. As I sat in silence, staring at the email, the weight of it all finally hit me. The relationship I had spent so many years building had crumbled in an instant. I had been living a lie. And now, I had to decide what to do about it. The days that followed the discovery were the hardest of my life. I could not stop thinking about what I had learned. Every memory I had of her, every moment I had shared with Alex, now felt like a lie. The anger that bubbled inside me was hard to contain. I wanted answers, but the truth I had uncovered was clear enough. It wasn't about finding out more. It was about confronting them, about facing the reality of the betrayal head-on. I couldn't understand how my wife, someone I had trusted so completely, could do this to me. Alex had been my college friend, a person I had considered a brother. We had shared so much, our dreams, our successes, and even our failures. But now, I was left questioning everything. What had been real? What had been genuine? I felt like I was drowning in doubt, the weight of the betrayal pressing on me with every breath I took. The life I had once known was shattered beyond recognition. I spent nights replaying the scenes in my head, seeing my wife and Alex together in my mind's eye. Each time, it stung deeper. How could they be so careless? How could they betray my trust in the way they did? They had made a mockery of everything I had built. But as the shock of the situation began to wear off, the anger started to fade into something else, something more calculated. I was no longer just hurt, I was furious, and I needed to make sure they understood the full extent of their actions. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't go on pretending like everything was fine. I had already suffered through the shock of the discovery, and now, I had to make sure they faced the consequences. My wife and Alex both needed to know that there was no escaping the truth. The lies they had built their relationship on would be exposed, and they would have to confront what they had done. But it wasn't just about confronting them in person. No, I knew that the damage I wanted to inflict was more profound. I wanted them to understand what they had done, not just to me, but to everyone else they had deceived. They had violated more than just the trust between us. They had betrayed everyone who believed in them. I realized that if they were to truly understand the magnitude of their actions, They needed to be exposed for who they were, not just to me, but to everyone who had supported them. The more I thought about it, the more my plan took shape. I was going to make sure that the truth came out in a way they could not ignore. I wasn't going to destroy their lives out of spite. I wasn't interested in some petty revenge. I just wanted them to face the consequences of their choices. I wanted to make it impossible for them to continue living the lives they had built on lies. I began by reaching out to a few close friends, people who had been part of our circle, who knew both my wife and Alex. I didn't give them all the details immediately, but I dropped hints, enough for them to begin questioning things. I wanted them to ask the right questions, to dig deeper into the situation. I knew that once they started, the truth would spread. My wife and Alex had lived in this carefully constructed world, a world where everyone believed in their story, but that world was crumbling now. The truth would expose them, and I was going to make sure it happened. At first, the responses were the typical reactions one might expect: disbelief, shock, and confusion. No one wanted to believe that Alex, the person they had known for years, could have betrayed me in such a way. And no one wanted to believe that my wife, the woman they thought they knew, could be capable of something so damaging. But I didn't stop. I provided them with evidence, the texts, the photos, and the details I had uncovered. There was no denying the truth once they had it all in front of them. And as the truth began to spread, I saw the reactions start to shift. People who had once supported Alex, who had believed in him as a friend, were now questioning his character. His carefully cultivated reputation was being stripped away, piece by piece. He wasn't the man they had all believed him to be. They could no longer turn a blind eye to the reality of what had happened. As for my wife, the reaction was just as intense. Her reputation, which she had worked so hard to build, began to unravel. Her relationships with family and friends started to fray as people realized the depth of her betrayal. I never wanted to hurt her in the way she was now being hurt, but she had chosen this path. She had made her decisions, and now she had to live with the consequences. Her lies couldn't shield her from the truth anymore. It was painful to watch, but it was also a kind of catharsis. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I wasn't trying to ruin her life or Alex's. I wasn't interested in revenge for the sake of revenge. But I wanted them to face what they had done. I wanted them to understand the weight of their actions, not just in terms of their relationship with me, but with everyone they had deceived. The truth was out now, and there was no way for them to hide from it. Alex's reputation began to take a major hit. People who had trusted him now looked at him with suspicion. They could no longer see him as the person he had once been. His actions had caught up with him, and there was no way to reverse the damage he had done. The truth had destroyed the image he had worked so hard to create, and in the process, it made it clear that he was not the friend I had thought him to be. No longer was he the man who had shared so many good times with me. Now, he was a man who had betrayed my trust in the most intimate of ways. My wife, too, faced the repercussions. She had always been careful about how others saw her, but now, there was no hiding from the truth. The facade she had built was shattered, and I could see the weight of it in her eyes. People who had once supported her now questioned everything about her. She wasn't the woman they thought she was. The guilt of what she had done began to sink in, but it was too late. The truth was now unavoidable, and there was no going back. I didn't enjoy watching their worlds crumble, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally taken control of the situation. The lies they had told, the trust they had broken, had been exposed. There was no more pretending, no more hiding. The consequences of their actions were now inescapable. And I realized that, for me, this was the only way to heal. I could never trust them again, but by ensuring their reputations were destroyed, I had taken the first step in reclaiming my power. The truth had set me free, and it was something that could never be undone. As the days passed, the weight of what I had done began to settle in. The reality of my actions hit me like a ton of bricks. I had exposed the truth, and there was no going back from it. Alex's reputation had been destroyed, and so had my wife's. People looked at them differently now, with a mixture of disappointment, anger, and disbelief. And while part of me felt satisfaction in seeing them face the consequences of their actions, another part of me felt hollow. I had lost everything. My wife, my trust in people, and even a part of who I had been. I had spent years building a life with her, years that now felt meaningless. Everything had been built on lies. The house we had bought together, the vacations we had taken, the plans we had made, they were all just a mask for the truth. I had been living a life I thought I understood, only to realize that it was all a carefully crafted illusion. The betrayal had shattered the foundation of everything I thought was real, and now, I was left to pick up the pieces of my own broken heart. I had no idea where to start. How do you begin to heal when the person you trusted most in the world has turned into a stranger? How do you rebuild your life when everything you once believed in has crumbled? The questions haunted me day and night. I couldn't escape the memories of the good times we had shared, the laughter, the love. It was all clouded by the knowledge that it had all been a lie. At first, I thought about reaching out to her, trying to salvage something, anything. But I knew deep down that it wasn't possible. There was no coming back from this. The trust had been broken in a way that could never be repaired. The truth had been laid bare, and neither of us could pretend it wasn't there. I had been betrayed and now I had to let go. As for Alex, I didn't know what to feel. I had always considered him a brother. We had been through so much together, from late-night study sessions in college to celebrations after our respective achievements. But now, seeing him exposed for who he truly was, I felt nothing but disgust. He had taken everything I valued and torn it apart without a second thought. He wasn't the friend I thought he was. He was someone willing to betray not just me but everything we had ever stood for. The man I had known was a facade, and now, I saw him for what he truly was. But what was the point of holding on to anger? What was the point of staying fixated on the people who had betrayed me? I realized that my own healing would only come if I let go of them, if I stopped letting their actions control my emotions. I had to make peace with myself. I had to stop replaying the same scenes in my mind and start focusing on what I could control. It wasn't about getting revenge anymore. It was about moving forward, finding myself again, and rebuilding my life from the ground up. I stopped keeping tabs on their lives. I deleted their numbers, removed their social media profiles from my feed, and tried to cut all ties. The last thing I needed was to see them trying to pick up the pieces of their own lives, pretending like nothing had happened. I knew that in the grand scheme of things, their lives would eventually return to some semblance of normalcy, but it didn't matter to me. What mattered was that I had taken back control. I had faced the truth, and I had chosen to walk away, to move on. I spent more time with my friends, with people who truly cared for me. They offered their support, their encouragement, and most importantly, their understanding. I began to heal, slowly but surely. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned if I had made the right decision, but those moments passed. I had no reason to hold on to the past, no reason to let the betrayal continue to define me. I had a future to look forward to, a future that didn't include them. As time went on, I realized that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. I had endured a betrayal that few people could understand, and I had survived. I wasn't the same person I had been before, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I had learned to trust myself again, to trust my instincts, and to value my own worth. I had let go of the anger and the hurt, and in doing so, I had freed myself. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see Alex or my wife suffer any more than they already had. Their lives had already been turned upside down by their own actions, and they would have to live with the consequences for the rest of their lives. But I didn't need to carry that burden. I had moved on, and that was all that mattered. I knew that I would never forget what happened. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it would always be a part of me. But it would not define me. I had chosen to take control of my own future, and in doing so, I had found peace. Thank you for watching this story unfold. If you found it interesting or relatable, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a new story.